Good evening and welcome. A very good evening and welcome to this Fireside Chat. I'm Malika Sridhar and I'll be your moderator for today. I'm a public policy professional and I've worked across government advisory, development research, and innovation, bringing in diverse voices and experiences of various stakeholders working towards sustainability and climate change. Today, I would be speaking with a stellar panel on innovating for clean air in urban India. I would firstly like to take the opportunity to thank the panelists for their time to interact with our audience and share their thoughts on this subject that has gained so much prominence over the years. With crop burning, automobile emissions, and increasing construction activities contributing to poor quality air in our burgeoning cities, clean air for all has to be a collaborative effort between policymakers, industry, innovators, and citizens. And as highlighted recently by the Minister for Environment, a mass movement in mission mode. The India Clean Air Challenge aims to bring together this ecosystem to identify, curate, deploy, and catalyze innovations for clean air at scale. Led and anchored by the ACT grants in collaboration with the Smart Cities Mission, City Innovation Exchange at the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and Social Alpha, this call for innovation would be focusing on curating innovations across two stages. Commercial-ready technologies that can be adopted at scale, supported by ACT and partners, and early stage technologies at the working prototype stage that can be supported in their lab to market journey, evangelized by Social Alpha. With this, I would like to quickly introduce our panelists, heading each of the partner organizations bolstering this program. Mr. Kunal Kumar, Joint Secretary and Mission Director, Smart Cities, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India. He is focused on creating a roadmap for how Indian cities will be designed, built, and managed in the future. He believes in the power of communities, collaborative work, and technology to enable creation of connected, livable, energy efficient, adaptive, and resilient cities. His current focus is on creating an ecosystem that will help sustain the smart cities movement in India for the long term. He has worked in the capacity of additional and municipal commissioner in 3 Indian cities, including Pune, for almost 8 years. He's an electrical engineering graduate from IIT Roorkee and a master's in public management from National University of Singapore, a program jointly conducted with the Harvard Kennedy School. Welcome, sir. Prashant Prakash. Prashant Prakash is the founding partner of Axel India, a venture capital firm, a serial entrepreneur and investor. Prashant began investing in Indian technology startups much before they acquired global attention. At Axel, his primary focus is on online marketplaces, B2B and SaaS. He has led investments in 30 Indian technology startups and serves as a board member in 16 companies. He has led seed or early stage investments in category defining companies like Flipkart, Ola, Swiggy, Urban Company, Book My Show, and Cult. He's actively involved in social entrepreneurship ventures that work to improve education and quality of environment in our country. A master's in computer science from University of Delaware and Doctor of Science from Mysore University. He serves as a co-founder of ACT France and also a member of the National Startup Advisory Council and chairman of Karnataka government's Vision Group of Startups. Welcome, sir. Mr. Manoj Kumar. Manoj Kumar is the founder and CEO of Social Alpha, an initiative to strengthen the science and technology startup ecosystem in India with a focus on lab to market enablement. Since its inception in 2016, Social Alpha has nurtured more than 200 mission-driven startups. Prior to founding Social Alpha, Manoj has been an entrepreneur as well as an early-stage investor. Manoj has also worked for over 2 decades in investment banking and financial technology firms, including global leadership roles in area of corporate strategy, M&A, product management, and R&D. An alumnus of Harvard Business School, Manoj is an advisor to Tata Trust and serves on the board of a number of companies, nonprofits, and research institutions. Before we start the discussion, a note to the audience to submit their questions in the Q&A panel, and we will be addressing them towards the end if time permits. So air quality as a sector, while it has seen a lot of policy interventions and research studies, we can agree is yet to see an exponential scale in innovation being deployed to mitigate, manage, and measure pollution. So my first question goes to Mr. Kunal Kumar. Given the urgency of the rising air pollution crisis in India, and the host of measures taken every year to mitigate its far-reaching implications, where do you think innovation plays a role within the government's mandate in solving for this crisis?
Thanks for that question, Malika. In fact, my warm greetings to all members of the panel and everyone who has joined this call. A fireside chat. I desperately need a fireside in my office right now. In Delhi, it's pretty gloomy outside, but nevertheless, we'll do with a fireside chat name at least. So when we speak of clean air, it reminds me of a very funny college story. So one guy says, well, you study hard, get a great job, work hard, and then you can relax on the beach. And the other guy says, well, if that's your goal, you can do it even today. Why do you want to go through this entire circle of hard work to reach there? But it seems funny that we have reached that part that, that story seems to be pretty much descriptive of what is our world today. After all our material and non-material achievements, all we want is clean air, clean water, peace of mind, which is something we probably had already. But when we started this journey of ours, sometimes honestly, my dog seems happier to me, which is not a great state of affairs to be in. It's an alarming situation. And the problem is, it's a VUCA problem. I call it a VUCA problem because, V is volatile, U is uncertain, C is complex, A is ambiguous. So it's a VUCA problem. You don't know how to attack it. But unless you attack all parts of the problem, you don't get solutions too. There's no fun deploying environment sensors. A lot of innovation is happening in sensors and needs to happen. We need to have indigenized sensors, which I normally term as affordable excellence, which is things which are affordable yet excellent. It doesn't seem to be, in many such cases because you have very expensive equipment. But having said that, there's no fun in having environmental sensors if you can't do anything with that data. So it has to be a holistic, integrated solution. Now, you can't have good metro rail systems in cities like Delhi, but you don't solve for first and last mile connectivity. So you don't have many people. Even if you have many people on metros, you still can have many, many more. But you can solve for everything and you can create committees to solve air pollution, but you will not be able to solve the origin of the problem, which is not being able to get in people into the metro systems in the first place. And all entities need to be addressed. So individuals, innovation for individuals, how we commute, how we use electricity at our homes, how we use water, how we handle our waste, innovations at that level. Then innovations for organizations. Do we incentivize the right behavior? For example, do we give bonuses to people who commute to work by cycle? I do so for the last 1.5 years. I don't get any bonuses. In fact, I sometimes end up being late to my meetings because, there's no hardware to store a cycle when you go to a new office. People say, "Ye cycle se kaun aa gaya hai?" Matlab ye aisa lagta hai jaise, you're out of that entire. You can't be in this meeting when you're traveling by cycle. So that's one. So how do you get organizations onto this? How do you take up issues of transport, air quality, green spaces, rivers, environment at such on the societal scale? It's easy to talk about these things in conferences, but when you as a leader go and talk to constituents in a city and tell them, look, this is a river you need to conserve. He'll say, well, where do I build my toilets? My home was declared illegal. Slum doesn't get good water supply. So many issues to tackle. So we need innovations not only in products, electrical vehicles, battery systems, storage, electricity, industry, commerce, transport, all that we talk about. We also need innovation in behavioral areas, visualization tools. How do you precipitate the issue? How do you engage the community? How do you get multicultural actors to work with each other? How do you actually, get community engagement? 360-degree VUCA problem requires handling from all directions. At the moment, it's like 6 blind men and the elephant. Nobody knows what the real shape is. All of them need to come together in a systemic way to solve it. I think within the smart cities mission, we are trying our bit. It's an ocean. We are probably some buckets of water in that. We're trying hard, trying to convince, trying to create an ecosystem of partners through a Climate Smart Cities Alliance, through the Climate Center for Cities, through the Climate Smart Cities Framework, through the City Innovation Exchange, which is a partner to this challenge. And I do hope that with partnerships with people, great people like Manoj and Prashant and many more who are in the ecosystem, who are driving this idea, I think we will be able to make a big change together going forward. I'm hopeful. All cities and all countries have gone through these paths. And I think our country has the benefit of innovation. We have the benefit of the youth. We have the benefit of smart thinking, which when comes together will be able to show the change of course very dramatically. And many other countries will actually benefit from the way India sees this. Yes, it is a big opportunity. It's an opportunity for business, for governments, and for society to transform things at an amazing scale. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kumar. I think what you rightly said, the benefit of innovation is on our side. And I think the innovation ecosystem in the last couple of years, especially since the pandemic, has seen immense collaboration. And ACT's Charter of Beliefs talks about how founders, investors, venture capitalists, and tech entrepreneurs have the power to solve for societal problems at scale. So, Mr. Prakash, could you tell us a bit more about how catalytic grants as such can help scale innovations, particularly in this whole sector of climate change and environment that you particularly lead?
Thanks, Malika. It's great to be part of this panel with Kunalji and Manoj, and especially excited because I think I see as every year progresses, there is more and more collaboration and very meaningful collaboration between the government and the startup ecosystem. And it's really heartening to see that at multiple levels. And I think this particular Clean Air Challenge, I think, is one great example of that. Thank you, Kunalji, for the support, and your organization, I'm sure, is fully behind this, and it will make a big difference to this Clean Air Challenge. Now, ACT, I think one of the things that it was a very serendipitous opportunity that came our way, right? So it's not something that we wanted to do. We had this COVID, this large COVID wave hit us. And we had this small Telegram group get formed with about 100 founders who all wanted to do something, but they didn't know, a lot of them, it's like I said, it's a really, these worlds are coming together. But when you need to do something at societal scale, you need to work with the government. You need to work with other foundations, other NGOs. I think the startup world was kind of oblivious to that, and they were in kind of their own silo. So a few of us had the good fortune of having worked a little bit and I'd worked with a couple NGOs before, and a couple of us had toyed with this idea of getting founders for change. So it just came together where we said, now we need to bring the entire ecosystem. And by the way, there is no such ecosystem anywhere in the world which brings together founders, venture capitalists, and the government and foundations all under one platform. So ACT that way is really path-breaking. That US, which has a 40-year history or 50-year history in venture capital, today does not have such an organization, right? So COVID was that opportune moment. So there were these deployable solutions which needed to be taken to market with the help of government. The first wave we were able to, and one of the things that we know how to do well is raise capital. So we were able to raise capital of 100 crores in just 1 week. And in the second wave, the problem and the magnitude was larger. So we had to raise 400 additional crores to supply almost 36,000 concentrators across the country. So what we saw from this whole thing is that, when we get together and put together the creativity and the acceleration capabilities of startups and the ability to raise capital, and you just put all these together, we just saw that this can be applied to not just one cause, which is what we saw in COVID, multiple causes. And what was just a single cause platform now became a multi-cause platform where we said, what are the big things staring at us, and where we don't have to spend another 3 decades still scratching the surface. Like Kunalji said, a lot of these, we have been at it for a long time, but it's just small progress. It's not we have not hit inflection in any of these areas in terms of what real movement we have been able to make, right? credible movement. So we said education, environment, women empowerment are the three large areas that we have to bring in significant change within the next decade for us to really, create a country that is equitable and something where everybody has a rightful place. And, like Kunalji also said, where we don't get up in the morning and say, can I breathe the air today in this my room, right? So that should not be the state that we are in as a country. So we have to change that, and we have probably less than a decade to do all of, especially when it comes to a lot of the challenges in the demographic dividend translating into something meaningful. So those are all somewhere they're all related, right? So that was the idea behind the environment vertical. And in the environment vertical, we said, again, we cannot be siloed. We said environment is just not about air. There is air, there is water, there is land use, and then there is waste. You have to tackle all of these together. And we need to bring in the right experts, the right startups, the right creative minds, and the right pools of capital that are addressing them. And more importantly, the government, one of the biggest stakeholders in the environment, and bring them on one platform. And that was the idea. And what is our role? Our role is to catalyze, bring in that capital, that initial capital, which is lacking, and Manoj will probably also allude to that. And with that 500 crores or 600 crores, can we then have other people bring in 5,000 crores into this ecosystem, right? So then at $1 billion, now we're starting to talk, right? So that is the overall idea of being one, like Kunalji said, holistic in our approach in anything we do, and take the power of the startup ecosystem, which is very urban centric, and change it like we're seeing in agri-tech. 5,000 startups. We need another 5 to 10,000 startups in the climate tech over the next 5 to 10 years. How do we make that happen, right? Slightly tougher challenge compared to agri-tech, which is slightly more India. There is a big monetization capability there in India. Here, it's a global opportunity. It will take slightly longer, but I think we are starting. We're starting, and with a lot of partners and the support of the ecosystem, I'm sure we will in 2 to 3 years see those 5,000 startups here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prakash. I think this is really interesting, and I totally agree with you that we really have a very short time frame to address some of these key challenges, particularly when it comes to climate change. I would now like to ask Manoj that in line with Social Alpha's unique architecture of bringing together the innovation ecosystem, the incubation labs and investment model, could you particularly tell us how programmatic pathways support innovations to scale? How will Social Alpha bring in their unique operating model to deliver solutions for clean air, particularly for this challenge?
Thank you, Malika, and good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's indeed a privilege that we are talking about air pollution and solutions. And I have two people in this panel, one Kunal from public policy side, and second Prashant from risk capital side, two of the most important enablement frameworks that help innovators and entrepreneurs. And this is what innovators and entrepreneurs actually need: a good enabling public policy system, environment, and risk capital. So thank you for giving me this opportunity and being part of this panel. Coming back to your question, Malika, see, Social Alpha has been designed as a multi-stage innovation, curation, and venture development platform. The reason is, in the mainstream world where industrial revolution has already happened, new industries have already emerged, we can have a siloed system where R&D can happen in one ecosystem, incubation labs can exist in another ecosystem, investors can exist in another financial markets ecosystem. But in new market creation opportunities like climate change brings us a new opportunity to create a big global market. It is important that the model of promoting innovation, taking innovation from lab to market, is fully integrated. It needs to be hand-holded, and you have to create a scaffolding around innovators as they build their prototype, they test and validate get feedback from people on the ground, from government and NGOs and private sector, and iteratively build using first principles, going back to the fundamentals of what problem are we trying to solve, how do we solve the problem, and do experiments to solve the problems and create solutions that the community wants to use and adopt and someone wants to pay for it, right? And therefore, when you create a completely new way of promoting innovation, then you end up actually creating new markets. And the new markets then perpetuate the investment in innovation and entrepreneurship. And that is what social alpha model is. How do we curate problem statements, validate those problem statements from all the stakeholders across private sector, public sector, and philanthropy, and then search for innovators and provide innovators multiple pathways. Some innovators may need R&D labs. Some innovators actually may need government procurement system. Some innovators actually need expert advice. Some innovators may need risk capital, right? And how do you provide a blended model of dilutive as well as non-dilutive risk capital to innovators, depending upon where they are in their life cycle? So these are some of the things that we have kind of created as part of the social alpha model. And I think when we apply it to air pollution, we should be able to identify reasonably large number of innovators joining one or two or multiple paths in this programmatic approach. I do believe that, innovators and entrepreneurs can really solve some of our most complex problems. 18th century in our history books is remembered for industrial revolution. I think 21st century will be remembered for making it more sustainable. And that is what innovators and entrepreneurs can do. What we need is an enabling policy environment and risk capital. Fortunately, we have both today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manoj. I think a lot of the work that Social Alpha has also done has really sort of shown how programmatic curation can really show a proof of concept of how innovation can be deployed on ground. So going back to Mr. Kunal Kumar, since these programmatic pathways show a strong proof of concept on the ground, we now know that
I think bandwidth.
Innovation exchange. How do they come into anchor and support innovations as part of the India Clean Air Challenge? How could you, talk about larger goals?
Mallika, you're breaking up. Maybe you want to turn off video and ask the question. Mallika, I don't think Kunal ji got the question.
I got the first part of what you're saying. You're talking about the pathways and probably how we as a ministry strengthen. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. So I wanted to understand more about the initiatives that the ministry is now taking up, the smart cities missions in particular.
Okay.
And how do you think that can support innovations for clean air? The City Innovation Exchange, for example, and also the larger goals of platforms and processes both. So in policy making, etc. How does that become an enablement in supporting and scaling
Yeah. So when we talk at the smart cities mission level, at the national level, it's a very overarching framework at what we are talking about, and there are many ways in which you can attack one problem. One is a very tactical way of attacking it by actually precipitating the problem clearly in the now, in the here and now, and addressing it. And also you can look at strategic ways of looking at that problem in the long term, because you will not go really too far in the long term if you stick to tactical initiatives in the short term. So when we talk of smart cities mission, there are, it's first of all, when it started in 2015, it was a leap in the unknown. Even today, even when people ask me honestly, what is a smart city? Sometimes it becomes very difficult for you to convince someone to understand what is a smart city, because it's like what is a good person, what is a good life. There's no one meaning in how you can describe all that. So when we look at clean air, we look at it in both strategic as well as tactical ways. Now, of course, the strategic way for us is to precipitate this entire idea of climate governance. How do you sensitize state governments and city governments to talk of climate not as a department, but as an overarching thing which cuts across everything? Even if you drop a pin today, you affect climate. You create a new street light, you create a new road, you build a new flyover, you take a new decision on how you run your water systems, you take a decision on how your people travel and commute in the city. All of that is influencing climate in a very dynamic equilibrium. And so this area of work is a fairly large area of our work, and that we are trying to drive through the Climate Smart Cities Assessment Framework. So the Climate Smart Cities program is built around creating this ownership on climate related issues in states and cities. And there's a big program around it. There is a Climate Center for Cities that we've established. And the Climate Center for Cities is working with states and cities, gradually nudging this agenda forward. So that's in the long term. We'll not get solutions in a year, two, maybe it takes a decade, but we are progressing. And 3 years back, if I look at the landscape, pretty much there was no talk on these issues, and now we've started to talk on them. We've started to start action on them. We've started innovative ways of governing climate issues in cities and all that. So that's one. Then if you look at the difference between health and healthcare, when people start talking about COVID, they say it's a health problem or a healthcare problem. Now, healthcare is what you talk about hospitals. Health is a larger concept where, how you commute, what you eat, and so many different things, affect the way your health is. Similarly, when we talk of, clean air, there are multiple different things and multiple strands of action that need to come into the play. Now, we started with, focusing on walkable cities, creating cycle-friendly cities, and pushing for public transport, innovations in public transport. Another area where we have a challenge ongoing right now is called the Transport for All Challenge, where we are inviting startups to help us bring people back into public transport post this social distancing issues and everything else that has because of the pandemic. So these challenges, another ways of looking at multiple dimensions of the same problem and trying to address each of them. Okay. Now we also promote approaches. So we promote approaches like the test, learn, and scale approach. So it's very difficult when you're faced with a complex problem. You can't really look for a big solution right away. You need to test the water first. You need to test this is going to work. If this works, first you test it out. If it take the learning and then scale it up. Maybe if the scaling is not modular, part of it gets scaled in X place, part of it gets scaled in Y. Something else comes from Z, and it's a mix and match which works in some other place. That approach building is something that is very important for us as a smart cities mission. It's a generic thing, but it's very important to solve complex problems like climate. So how do you build this approach in the way our cities function? And then the smart cities also started the City Innovation Exchange, which I look at like a coffee shop where innovators and city officials can come together and start the dialogue at least. Forget about what is going to happen later. Forget about real deal happens or not. At least this dialogue, which is missing right now, understanding what a city is all about. Innovators are in love with their solutions and cities are in love with their problems. And since they love different things, the love doesn't really have become mutual among them. So how do you actually start to love the problem that the city faces as an innovator, and how do you, as a city official, get exposed to the kind of solutions that exist? So the City Innovation Exchange is, making that possible. Of course, a lot of journey needs to be traveled on that. These are, platforms which are easy to begin, but actually very difficult to take forward because it needs a completely new way of thinking, which is, which takes time to evolve. However, on the City Exchange, City Innovations Exchange, now we have pathways for direct procurement, pathways for allowing innovators to test in real conditions in cities, actually getting funding from cities to do testing in cities, to conduct pilots. And once they have conducted some successful pilots, to actually open up a pathway for direct procurement for their products into cities. So all that is getting built. And that is another area of work that we are trying to do. So you can see, and then plus, there are many tactical initiatives that we keep driving. For one of the things is like these challenges that we do, the Transport for All Challenge, the challenge that we are doing with you right now. We recently concluded another challenge called the Smart Move Challenge, There are challenges in many other fields. We also work with the Smart India Hackathon team, and so on and so forth. Uh, so the endeavor is to get to a partnership model of working where we are closely knit with the academia, we are closely knit with the industry, we are closely knit with people like the Social Alpha, Act Grants, and we find many more partners, because this is a problem which will require humongous scale of partnerships to operate. And we are trying to do that. We're trying to instill that way of working in our cities, that they believe in partnerships. They start to work in networks. They don't believe they will be able to solve the entire problem themselves, which they're sure they will not be able to. But they can, with the current ecosystem that India provides, they can successfully get enough partnerships to be able to work. So how do we build the muscle for creating partnerships? How do we build the muscle for using data and technology to solve problems? How do we build a muscle for climate governance? How do we build approaches like the test, learn, scale approach, the enabler versus consumer approach? I mean, you look at innovation, you are also enabling it, you're consuming it. How do you make this happen at a national scale is the challenge that we're trying to address with the smart cities mission. So yeah, sorry for being a bit lengthy on that.
No, thank you so much. I think this is really very interesting, and all of the initiatives really talk about how we can bring not only different stakeholders together, but how we can follow different pathways to solve different challenges. And I think, I think this can really sort of scale up with the right kind of partners, with the right kind of programs. And I think my question to Mr. Prashant Prakash now, particularly with regard to this program, that is the India Clean Air Challenge, what kind of outcomes do you expect from this challenge, particularly with these strong partners coming on board and the kind of curation that we expect to do? What do you think would we be likely to see in the next coming months?
Thanks, Malika. So I think, first of all, it's a pioneering effort in that sense. I mean, there's been, we just did a little bit of, research and saw that globally, interestingly, there's not many clean air challenges that have been thrown open before. So in that sense, this is a pioneering, again, effort with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and Social Alpha. And both of them bring very, very key ingredients to make this pioneering effort kind of, have the right foundation. One, like Kunalji said, Kunalji mentioned all the aspects of the platform that the ministry and the mission brings, I think are very, very important ingredients to make this challenge successful. And Manoj's team has the experience in curating, handholding, and connecting these startups. And ACT can play the role of one, of course, bringing in capital. So we are committing to $1 million of grant money for this, both across very early stage and scalable startups, right? So that's kind of at the high level. Now at the next level, we again are looking at solutions across a very broad spectrum. So whether it's mobility, agri-waste management, monitoring and analytics, there's a lot of interesting, like Kunalji said, when you're building a road today, there is an environmental angle to that. And there are construction materials where I think our entrepreneurs, so I think some of these, we really want to see where can these innovations also create global market opportunities for these entrepreneurs. So there are these two buckets, right? There is one bucket which will be about working with the government, where we will support in procurement, support in giving them capital, mentoring from Social Alpha, and so on. And then there is the other bucket where these climate innovations, where you're trying to reduce the green premium, so to speak, right? Which is like the biggest innovation opportunity here. Are there a lot of them which have an indirect effect on air and indirect effect on pollution, but have a very commercial, non-governmental market too, and not only in India, but global. So I think we are looking for innovations in both these buckets. And I think, entrepreneurs are, folks that want to see the big money also, right? So they're not always, there is a social angle. They probably understand that they are in an area where they need to do good, but also they probably want to see that, is this a very fertile sector to build large outcomes? So we want to also pick a few companies through this challenge, which demonstrate that, when you pilot and test something here in India, these can become very large global technologies. And this whole problem where most of our smart cities are bringing in global technologies and using them in our cities has to reverse very positively. So that's at a high level what we expect from this challenge. And January 21st is the last date. Don't expect on an extension. Try to use this next few days to put forth your startups, and hopefully you'll be one of the folks selected.
Thank you so much, Prakash. I think one thing that you mentioned is quite resonating, that about whether this is a fertile sector to build, and the fact that India can actually pilot as well as test some of these innovations and take it forward. So coming to you, Manoj, Social Alpha has such an extensive experience in supporting early stage startups. Could you tell us a bit more about what this early stage support looks like, and what Social Alpha has particularly done for startups that are working in climate action and sustainability?
Thanks, Malika. See, we have been working in waste management. We have had some startups in other areas of sustainability. One startup that has been in news very recently was Takachar, that won the Earth Award recently. So Takachar was an innovation in MIT, and Kevin from MIT and Vidyut from India, they joined hands together, and we have an clean energy lab in Delhi. And in that lab, it was incubated, it was part of our first cohort, and we provided them lab access, mentoring, as well as some early grants. And today they are on track to create a commercially successful solution very soon. We have another company in Kanpur called Kanpur Flower Cycling, popularly known as Phool, that takes on all the flower waste from temples and religious places and creates lifestyle products out of it. We started working with Phool when it was not even a company, it was a proprietorship firm. And I met Ankit in one of the events. And from then we kept, I'm still on the board, we kept mentoring them. Today it's a mainstream business. I think almost all large investors want to have a stake in that company because the way it has grown. So the beauty of innovation is it converges the priorities of development and environmentalism. And entrepreneurs create a model that works for community, works for society, works for the nation, and works for the markets. This converging power of innovation and entrepreneurship is very important. Right? We have another company called Blue Sky Analytics that was part of our first urban livability core. They have created an amazing data analytics company with APIs which can be used for urban data. I keep repeating this point that innovation and entrepreneurship is the new genre of activism, and this has an amazing ability to create impact that is non-linear and scalable. And today, the environment is really good because we have capital and policy both supporting it. It's a great opportunity for Indian entrepreneurs and innovators to do what IT industry did 20 years back, right? The world wants to decarbonize. Every sector of the economy has to decarbonize. Every pollution, whether it's air, water, soil, has to be solved. it can only happen through entrepreneurship. I believe that the next wave of entrepreneurship will be deep science and technology driven entrepreneurship that will create a business case for sustainability, and sustainability will be the big business for the country.
Thank you so much, Manoj. I would just like to go around the room once before we move over to Q&A. I would just like to request the audience, if you have any questions for the panelists, please do take out time to share them now. So yeah, some sort of parting thoughts, Mr. Kunal Kumar, anything that you'd like to tell the audience with the upcoming challenge, issues on clean air and urban livability overall?
I think I'll just maybe emphasize at the end that the next 2 decades, 90% of the urbanization that the world is going to see is going to happen in India. Sorry, is going to happen in Asia and Africa, and I think close to 50% of that is going to happen in only 2 countries, India and Nigeria. So the stakes are very high in getting this urbanization right. All of us, when we think of cities, we think of opportunities, we think of good quality of life, we think of education, good health, economic opportunities. But look at what is happening today due to COVID. I think the premium on really being able to retain talent in cities has gone up. I mean, maybe we're not very far away from a point that people may start living in Zoom enclaves outside cities, and they're in their own world and participating in the world through Zoom conferences, and once in a while whizzing on their personal choppers or whatever mode of transport they have, very efficient, and come to the city, do their job and go back. So if cities have to work in the future, the premium on making them work is very high. And one of the things is clean air. And if India has to get it right, I think this is one sector we need to crack. Because otherwise, if we don't, then it's not only going to damage India, it's going to damage the world. Because think of the numbers that are going to move into India's cities in the next couple of decades. Every year we add a Chicago to our population. And in the next 2 decades, the number of people who will move into India's cities is going to be close to the population of entire America today. So that's where we come from, and all of us, have to get our partnerships right, have to get our funding, mechanisms right, have to get public policy right, have to get our approaches right, and I think critical mass is emerging, which is very heartening. I can see it from inside emerging, which is very promising. Though in a scale that we live in, we don't see change happen very quickly. But visibly, a lot of things are moving in the right direction. So I'm very hopeful for the world. I think with startups, it's been a pain point. I mean, honestly, in government, we've really not been able to crack beyond challenges and beyond hackathons. What next? What beyond pilots? Is death by pilot? And what happens next? So through the City Innovation Exchange, we're trying to fix that story too. If it works, it can become a template for other ministries. We all have to come together and try to see how we all can contribute in learnings as to make that platform work. Because I see a lot of hope in things that are done of similar kind, like the City Innovation Exchange, and actually bridging that gap and solving that problem which has been there forever. So that maybe is what I would like to add to my initial comments.
Right.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Kumar. So we have a couple of questions that have come in. Maybe Mr. Prashant Prakash could take one. One of the questions that has come in is, do you feel decarbonizing energy initiatives can be startupized? That's one of the questions that has come in from the audience. Just your thoughts on that possibly.
Yes, I think we have, and I think Manoj can also add there. So me and Manoj have been discussing about one or two startups there in that area, where again, it's a huge problem, the whole decarbonization area. And every industry also, I mean, one is the natural use of natural decarbonization. And then, of course, the opportunity at the industry level. I think both of these will be fertile areas for startups to look at, and could have ultimately an international appetite and funding availability.
Yes, just to add to what Prashant said, Malika, we are already seeing a large number of startups in clean energy. For example, in our clean energy incubation lab in Delhi, we have incubated more than 35 startups, including attracting corporate interest in them, right? So it is happening. And it's very important to understand that startups have the agility to take innovations from lab to a scale where they become attractive for mainstream corporates as well as businesses, right? So they work in a very agile and iterative mode. So yes, it is not just a possibility, it's actually happening today in the country.
Thank you so much for your thoughts. I think the next question is for Mr. Kunal Kumar. Why don't companies incentivize employees who follow more sustainable day-to-day practices, just like companies aim to be more sustainable on their day-to-day operations? I think one of the reasons why this thinking isn't prevalent is because many around the world believe that being sustainable is simply a good thing to do, but isn't necessarily good for the bottom line and the business. As you and I know, there are use cases that clearly suggest that sustainability and profitability can go hand in hand. So where do you think the gap is currently, and how can that be addressed at scale?
I don't think there is a fair play award in corporate governance, just like you have an IPL, do you? Fair play is something that needs to be nurtured in an ecosystem. So I think one company deciding to be fair while the other is brutally business oriented, you can't survive in such a field. So I don't know how that's going to happen. It's a tragedy of the commons kind of story. And also I believe you're right. You've probably given the answer also by saying that it doesn't make business sense sometimes, because in business terms, you need to move faster, you need to move quicker, you need to be more, so maybe the choices are, contrary to sustainable is what you believe in. However, you also said in your own question that it may not be so. They are not binary things where the 0 or 1, this happens and the other doesn't happen and vice versa. But who bells the cat? It's a tragedy of the common story. I can be good. Look, I will go by cycle on the road, but if 100 other cars are there on the road, then at one point I say, well, why do I take this effort? If I have a good car at home, let me also start traveling by that car. I think that's pretty much what's happening in the corporate world.
I think I'll just add, Malika, that of course, there's a lot of greenwashing in ESG, and I'm not saying all of ESG is what it should be, but I think markets are starting to value that. And ultimately, it's only the push from the markets that is going to get these businesses to wake up. And they have to see that it actually gives them better valuation in markets, and investors will penalize companies that, like Kunalji said, achieve profits at any cost.
In fact, new generation consumers are willing to pay a premium for sustainable value chains and supply chains. It is happening, right? And younger generation is showing a lot of interest in consuming more sustainable products and services.
Thank you. I think probably we take one last question from Manoj. So Manoj, how do you plan to collaborate with CSOs and think tanks like CEEW? This is coming from Center of Energy, Environment and Water, like us, who work on air pollution management to identify and incubate innovative solutions. What are the possible streams of collaboration and ecosystem development there?
I think one of the biggest, that's a great question actually. I think one of the most important input that the researchers, think tanks, and civil society organizations can do is to curate problem statements. What problem needs to be solved? Which problem is this? How big is the problem? And what the solution could translate into. Like if the solution is created and community accepts it or markets accept it, what kind of a market creation it can lead to, right? And CSOs need to also become evangelists of innovation and entrepreneurship and not just activism. That is very important because we need to solve the problem and not to marginalize communities in this whole debate of climate change and environmentalism, right? We have to be solution focused, and the problem statement need to be built with basic principles, absolutely broken into basic units where we can start composing problem statement in challenges and give these challenges to R&D, academia, etc. So I think there is a huge opportunity for research organizations, think tanks, and CSOs to partner with innovators and entrepreneurs. Think of them as also activists and change makers.
Thank you so much, Manoj. I think we have kept really great timing. So we probably wrap up this fireside chat so that all of you can have enjoy the rest of your
Malika,
evening.
before you wrap up, I just wanted to thank you as well, because Kunal and Prashant, I don't know whether you know that Malika used to work for Social Alpha. She basically built this program, but her heart was always in public policy. So she has moved out of Social Alpha and joined Godrej. But I'm very happy because Godrej family has a stellar track record of working on sustainable energy and sustainability concerns. So I'm hopeful that Malika will pull in Godrej family into this whole initiative as she moved from Social Alpha to Godrej.
So Malika, you will create that role model that all of us are looking for in terms of the right blend of profits and concern for.
And beyond and beyond everything is that you have to be the change you want to see. So you're biking helmets.
Yes, Gandhiji said that, right?
Right.
Change that you want to see. Malika, thank you so much for curating, building this program. Really.
Thank you
so much. Thank you, Manoj. Thank you, Kunal. Thank you, Prashant. A very short note of thanks to all of you for not only sharing your personal journeys. I think Mr. Kunal Kumar specifically so inspiring. I mean, you cycle to work. I think that's something. Livability is people are going to really pick that up. It's the next model for livability. Manoj and Prashant, your own personal journeys of supporting and really nurturing startups, early stage, late stage. I'm sure all of this can really solve for clean air, because clean air is not only a privilege, like you all said, it's also a huge responsibility for each one of us. Special thanks to ACT Grants for leading this initiative, and the Smart Cities Mission and City Innovation Exchange initiatives bringing invaluable support and scale to the program. I would particularly like to thank the Social Alpha team, my colleagues Shruti Parija, Vinod Ramnarayan, and Aishani Pandey for bringing forth this much needed platform for discussion at a time when current health urgencies can only be solved alongside concerted environmental efforts. Thank you to the audience for your wonderful questions. You can write more to the team, particularly visit the website, ACT Grants, and have a great week ahead. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.